running your own business is one of the most rewarding and terrifying things you'll ever do. And it's not for everybody. And, as entrepreneurs, we're not like everybody. Not everybody else is comfortable with the risk we take, the effort we put in, or just with the general uncertainty of running any business today. But it is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast with your host, David Mansilla. This is the place where we interview incredible, amazing people that are living life in their own terms. As the name says, Breaking Free is into a beautiful life. It's into having freedom in every aspect of your life. So we have with us Bill. Welcome to the show, Bill. You are a great example of how to actually accomplish a beautiful life, which is what we came here to do, to learn how to live, how to give, how to receive, as abundance is our birthright. Welcome.
Thank you, David. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about you. What's your full name? Where were you born, and where are you living right now?
So my name is Bill Birck. I'm the CEO of Reed Construction. We're a general contractor based in Chicago. I live just north of the city in a suburb called Wilmette with my wife, Beverly, and my two children, Will and Grace.
That's fantastic. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You say general contractor, and nobody knows how small, how big you are, or what does that entail. So can you expand a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we're a general contractor, which means we work with clients to navigate and build their vision for their project. So typically you'll have an architect come in and draw a space. And that space could be in one of our four main markets. The first could be in our workplace market, which is, people are going into an office, maybe it's a law firm, maybe it's an architectural firm or a nonprofit, and they will hire an architect to design their space, and they will hire a general contractor such as Reed to go out and build that space. Our other markets consist of healthcare. We do a lot of healthcare work, which means we renovate existing hospitals, and we also build behavioral health hospitals. We build memory care centers. We build medical office buildings, really anything healthcare related. And last, we do upgrade work. So we call it capital improvement work for landlords. So we will upgrade their existing building by perhaps putting a fitness center in, by building out some spec suites for smaller tenants, by renovating their existing lobbies and corridors and roof decks and that sort of thing. And our last group, which is a newer group that we started just before the pandemic, was our cannabis group. We will build grow facilities around the country, as well as dispensaries and extraction labs for cannabis companies.
That's fabulous. So you're helping build our beautiful cities then.
Yes. Yeah. What's really rewarding about our work is there's something tangible at the end that we can point to and say, we built this space out. And really what does it for us is when that tenant comes in or that patient comes in and they appreciate the space. So it's really a mission-driven culture that we have at Reed. And we really take great pride in those relationships that we build and those projects that we build.
Yeah, brother, I really admire your work. We have a tiny real estate business on the side with residential rentals, and we decided to turn one house into a duplex last year. Mm-hmm. And it was so difficult. I cannot imagine how it is to build a hospital or build a multi-level family building or to renovate or create a gym. It's crazy what you do.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because we in residential construction, the emotions run even higher, I think, in residential construction, because oftentimes people are renovating their house and they're living in it. And just a quick story I will tell you is probably about 6-7 years ago, we were renovating our house in Wilmette. We were putting a little bit of an addition onto it, and it was a house that was built in 1910. So we were upgrading some of the electrical work and mechanical work, and my wife was really general contracting it. She knew enough about the business to general contract it. But what I didn't really tell her was that residential work is completely different than commercial construction. So I was giving her advice in my commercial world which was not very well received in the residential world. So it made for a very rocky residential project here in Wilmette. But the good news is my wife and I are still married. We've been married for 25 years, and we got the project done. So, but you're right, residential is a very different form of construction than what we do here at Reed.
It's impressive for sure, because even at a large scale, like I was just watching this video, they are about to auction this humongous property in LA. I think it's on Bel Air. It's 108,000 square feet single family home. Imagine that. It's the largest, most expensive home in the USA. Yeah. And the bill was for $500 million. And now they're going to auction it off for $300 million. So if you look at the price per square feet, it went like from normal, which is $5,000 a price square feet, to like $3,000. It's crazy. And the builders, the general contractors and the builders, they went bankrupt in the project.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, David, most general contractors that run into financial trouble, they don't do it because they have too little work. They run into trouble because they have too much work. And it really becomes a cash flow issue as to whether they can float that much construction before they get paid. Typically, contractors put work in place and then they bill for it, and then 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 120 days goes by before they collect that money. So if they run into really big projects and they're not financially capable of seeing that cash flow through the system, that's when they get in trouble.
How do you manage scope creep and money overruns? Because so I'll give you the analogy. I run a software development company, so I do what you do, but with software, right?
Sure.
And it's very complicated too. And for me, it's hard because sometimes people think that by pushing a button, they can change the entire architecture of the system, for example, or they can build a new aisle or make another tower for the same price. I'm like, guys, like this is not in the spec. So we have a very good change management system that help us supply our clients with what they want with realistic expectations. But I can imagine, like for you guys, you have something spec'd out, and then maybe your clients wants to change their mind. Like, how do you actually make sure that you still make money while delighting your clients?
Sure. So most projects are made or broken in pre-construction. So before we've ever put a shovel on the ground or anybody's done any actual construction work, the clearer we can get on those drawings and trying to figure out what, if any, unforeseen conditions may occur during the project, that's your best defense against cost overruns. Now, occasionally, for example, if we're building a healthcare or we're working in a hospital, sometimes hospitals are composed of many buildings that were built in different years, some with overlapping mechanical and electrical systems, some separated. So it can be very confusing as to what was actually put in place 100 years ago when some of these buildings were built. So in those sort of cases, we put in a contingency for unknowns, for things that can't be known at bid time, and we put that contingency in a bucket, if you will. And then when we run into those issues, we bring those forth to the client and to the architects that this is the condition, this is what we ran into, and then we give them a few options. So we usually do this 1-3-1, where it's one issue and we can describe it in 2 or 3 sentences, 3 recommendations, and then 1 recommendation, or three possible solutions, and then 1 recommendation of here's what we're supposed to do, but we like to get that all out there. What we've found is, if you want to do an unforeseen condition, it could be a cost overrun, which nobody wants. But if people understand what you've run into and you've given them some options, then they feel much better out. They had an option. They could have gone this way, which might have had a lower impact on cost. Another option might have had a different impact on schedule. So we look at different ways to do it, and then we give them the option, and that keeps us on the same page.
That's beautiful, and I can tell you have a ton of experience. That's why you're still here and growing. So let's look back. Let's have a trip back in time. High school, last year of high school. What did you decide to do with your life, and why?
So last year in high school, I was getting ready to go to college to study music.
Music.
I played music. So I'd worked for the company. Reed is a family business. I'm the 5th generation in the business. That last year of high school, I was 18. I made a few statements when I was 18. One, that I was never going to get married. Two, I was never going to live in the suburbs. Three, I'm never going to have kids. And number four was that I'm never working for Reed Construction. I worked there in high school and in college driving the truck and as a laborer. And while I enjoyed that experience, I was like, that's my dad and my mom's thing. That's not my thing. And I want you to tell on my 18-year-old pronouncements, I'm 0 for 4. So I'm married, I have kids, I live in the suburbs, and I work for Reed Construction. And I'm this is the Break Free podcast. I would say, like, I'm very happy about all those choices. But I would caution other 18-year-olds from speaking in absolutes, because you might have to take it back on a podcast someday.
It's funny, right? When you start growing up and you think you're a mature person and you think you have your life figured out, you have no idea that you're just beginning, right?
Right.
You just got a driver's license and maybe you have a high school diploma and you think, you're the smartest person in the world, right?
Well, that's what my dad would always say to me. He said, not always right, but never in doubt.
Exactly. And, and for kids, if kids are listening to this, guys, come on, like, ladies, this is just the beginning, right? Taking the right choice in school the first time is even harder than anything else. Usually it takes 2 or 3, tries, or you register with this major and then you go to this class and you like this subject better and you have all the right to change subjects, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah, I would encourage kids. I mean, most of the friends that I went to high school with and college with, they change what they want to do as they get more information, and that's, I think sometimes kids think that they have to stick with whatever their first dream was, and that first dream could be great. And if you work really hard, I'm hoping it all works out. But there's a lot of other opportunities out there that I had no clue about in high school and in college. And as you go through the next few years, particularly as a young adult, you're going to be exposed to so many more things. You might be able to change that, and that's okay. You should be adaptable. That is the time to really figure out what you want to do. And I know many entrepreneurs who do that their entire life, where they're doing this, they build this business, and that was great, and then they learn about something new and they start that business and they do it, and that's really exciting, and it's really rewarding to be able to switch and to be open to that kind of change
and have that flexibility, right? Like we are, like, in our mind, we're so set, like your four affirmations, none of them became true, right?
Yeah.
But it's good because that means that you were flexible enough to realize that the path that you chose wasn't the right path. Right?
Yeah. I always look at it that I wasn't that bright at 18, so that's why that's what I think got true.
So do you ended up going into music or not?
I did. So I when I went to college, I got a liberal arts and music degree, and then I moved out to New York City, and I was playing jazz and rock and roll gigs out there for about 5.5 years.
That is amazing. So you actually follow through for a while.
Oh yeah. I did. I played, electric bass and upright bass. I went out to New York and went out and studied at Manhattan School of Music out there for jazz, and I got a master's in jazz performance. And then I would play, jazz gigs some nights and rock and roll gigs other nights, and that, from an entrepreneur's perspective, that is really inclusive of anything that I still do today, which is, you need to market yourself, your band, your company. It's the same thing. You need to find a group of people that find a value in your product or service. In music, they enjoy listening to you or your band, and then getting paid for that value and making sure you collect money and that you have the next gig and you can make it a sustainable operation. And there's a lot of working together and collaborating with different people from different walks of life throughout that process. So I think that training, while it wasn't particularly financially successful, was just a great time and a period of my life that I really enjoyed and worked hard at and loved doing. But like I said, to be flexible and say, well, I love playing music, but I don't necessarily love playing all the music. The gigs that pay the best aren't necessarily the ones that are most rewarding to me musically. So decided to make music more of less of a vocation and more of a hobby. And I still play to this day, not as often as I used to, but still play to this day.
That's beautiful. And it must be so fulfilling too, because you actually made your dream come true. And then you realize, well, this is not going to sustain me, not in the way that I thought it would, right? So it's okay. And you still enjoy it, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So when was that time? What year was that when you said, okay, this is enough, I got to change careers? And how did you end up in the family business?
So that was about 1996, somewhere right around there. And at that point, I'd left New York. I came back to Chicago, and I was working for Morgan Stanley as a financial advisor. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to do music. I'd like to do something. I was always interested in the stock market and how all that works. I was able to get a job at Morgan Stanley, and the first year there is really a year of survival. It's very competitive. They send a group of you, which has about 180 individuals in your class, and that class is competing each other. At the end of the first 3 months, the bottom quartile of your class gets fired. So that's for many of us, that was a big motivator to try to stay in that top quartile. At the end of 6 months, whatever's left out of that original 180, that bottom quartile of that then gets fired. And then the same thing that happens after a year. So at the end of the year, you're left with just a fraction of the group that you started with. And that group is a pretty competitive group that survives. So I survived that first year. I moved into my second year. And about a year and a half after that, I really looked at the guy, was 15 years older than me in the office, who, kind of did the natural progression at Morgan Stanley. And I'm like, I just decided, I don't want to be that guy. Like, he's a great guy, but I don't want to be there. And at the time, my dad, was running the business, and he had gotten bladder cancer. And so he came down with bladder cancer. And my mom was also sort of pushing me, like, you need to, come over and help out. And so I left Morgan Stanley, and my dad was also involved in another business. He's an entrepreneur, which was called Turnkey Facilities, which help outfit different groups. So when I first came over and left Morgan Stanley, I went to Turnkey, which was a startup. And then it was clear that we needed more really help on the construction side of what we did. So I moved over and started doing business development for the construction business. And from that's sort of the promise maker side of the world, and going out and meeting customers. And then it was coming back to make sure that we hit all our deliverables so we could get repeat business from those customers. And that got me involved in every part of the business over the next few years after that.
You know how similar our businesses are. It's crazy. But you use brick and mortar, I use code, I use zeros and ones, but it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Like we have to go promise something, and then now we have to deliver it. So let's go deliver.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes to deliver is what we'll do, right?
Yes, and your reputation is the number one thing. I told my team, we are just as good as our last client. Yep. It doesn't matter how good how many awards, how well we've done. We're just as good as our last client, right?
And David, it's funny you said it. I say the same thing to our team, and we're as good as our last project. Like, if the last project went well, we are great. If it's not, we need to get our act together and make every project great.
Exactly, that's fabulous. So your life is incredible. Like, you went to different paths twice until you found the third time you actually got in the place that you were supposed to be.
Yes,
this is amazing, and now you are a super happy individual. I can feel your happiness, right?
Thank you. I always tell younger entrepreneurs, I said, running your own business is one of the most rewarding and terrifying things you'll ever do. And it's not for everybody. And as entrepreneurs, we're not like everybody. Not everybody else is comfortable with the risk we take, the effort we put in, or just with the general uncertainty of running any business today. But it is one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. So I really, next to, I would say, being married and having children, it has been the most rewarding experience I've had in my life.
It is. And the pursuit of freedom, right? I think people I had this in my heart for the last 3 weeks specifically because I'm writing a book called Your Life in Abundance. And everybody wants to be rich. Everybody wants to have $1 million or more in the bank. But that's not really what people want. People want to be free, to have freedom, right?
Yes.
And one of the best ways to reach freedom in your life is through your own business, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. And it's not, I mean, it is if you set it up that way. I mean, I would say early on in my career, my business was running me more than I was running my business. And I think from talking to, other entrepreneurs and how they run their business and what they've learned and throughout the process, I was able to get better and better at running the business and not having the business run me.
And that's key, because the same thing happened. Like this podcast came out of the book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail, which was my first book.
Yeah.
And in the book, I explained how I thought I was trapped in a corporate job because I wanted to be my own boss. And then I quit, I created my business. And in my business, I created a bigger, stronger jail. So I had to break out of that jail too. And it was twice as hard as the first one.
Yeah. Well, there was a quote, you and I, David, are in strategic coach together. And there was a quote from Dan Sullivan, which I've used since I stole it from him, which is, if you're going to make your life a game, at least make it one you can win. And I've always thought about that. And I particularly for younger entrepreneurs, if you're going to make it a game, make it one you can win. Make it one that continually helps you improve your game and your freedom. And I think that's really what's exciting to me, and what kind of gets me up in the morning is, can I play this game better tomorrow than I did today? Can I play it better next quarter or next year than I do today? And that's what motivates me.
Another thing that strikes me in your story is that you have changed careers 3 times, right?
Yep.
But you were not professionally ready for them. So you went to school for music and you ended up being a very good financial advisor, running the stock market, and then you became an entrepreneur. And those two has nothing to do with music. And you still were able to excel on all of them. So how can you tell the audience, how do you pull that off? Because some people are like, oh no, I don't want to get my own business, or I don't want to change careers because I have no idea what that entails. And they may be right. But you actually made it happen, right?
They might be. I would say early on in my career, particularly with Reed, but even when I was with Morgan Stanley, if you had an opportunity at that point to reach out and ask for advice for people, and I did that. I was saying, this was what I was doing before. I was doing music. Now I'm over here at Reed, and I want to grow this business. Any advice? And I was really fortunate that there was 3 people in particular that I asked advice to that sort of took me under their wing and gave me really good advice. And I would leave that whatever meeting I'd take them out to lunch. We'd have the conversation. I would, spend the next several weeks trying to incorporate some of their ideas and some of their suggestions. And I would go back to them and say, okay, I did this, this, and this, and what's next? And they would give me the next steps. And so I want people out there to know that if you ask for help and say, I don't know everything, and I really would love your opinion, there's a ton of entrepreneurs out there that were that boy or girl that, at one point asking for advice, and they're happy to pay it back. Because they see, at least for me, I feel like I see some of my younger self in them, in their ambition and in their drive and their entrepreneurial spirit. And who wouldn't want to help those folks? I mean, and I was very fortunate. I would love to pay it forward.
Yeah, and you know what? That's why we're doing this. This whole thing is my way of giving back, right? Because I was in your shoes too, and I was a kid that knew how to do very good programming that was pretending to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
That's what I was. Yeah. I was just a kid. I was like a little chick, completely wet in this world where I had no more job stability. I had no more income, but I was a very good coder and a very good architect. And I thought I was a good leader, which was a complete lie. 5 years later, I realized that I was a horrible leader.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've had those epiphanies too, where you think back and like, yeah, that was terrible. I never would have done that.
Yeah.
But look, I think one thing about entrepreneurs is we have the ability to learn from mistakes, and when we make mistakes, you learn from them and you move on. And I think if you get really good at it, you learn from other people's mistakes rather than just all of your own. So again, I think it's important for entrepreneurs to hang out with other entrepreneurs to learn what they've done that worked and what they've done that hasn't worked, and then try to kind of take that knowledge and use that to play your own game.
Definitely. Talking about mistakes and problems, what has been one of the biggest business problems that you ever had, and how did you overcome it?
So I guess there was if I could pick one problem there.
I know, because there's hundreds of them, right?
I know it's only an hour podcast. We'd have to come back for the problem section. The biggest one I think recently would be as millennials started coming into the business, they not to an individual, but many of them thought differently and valued different things than like Generation X or Generation Y. Like the new millennials, they value different things in the business. For example, when I first joined, whether it was at Morgan Stanley or whether it was at Reed, you have a desk and a phone and a computer, and it's kind of up to you to figure out everything else. And if you did a good job, that senior person, that boss would come over to you after 2 or 3 years, and if you were doing a good job, they decide to learn your name. That was what it was. And you're like, hey, they know my name. This is great. The millennials, I think, are looking for a lot more transparency. They want to know everything that's going on. They want a lot more feedback, and they want to understand their career path more than I think my generation did. So the challenge was like, how do we give them that? And really what we do now is on a quarterly basis, I hold a town hall meeting for everyone in the business. And we review all our numbers from the previous quarter, all our strategic projects from the previous quarter. And then we look to the next quarter. Here's what we're doing. Here's exactly what our goals are. And then we look all the way down to the end of the year. And we roll that out, and we do that with the entire company every quarter. So everyone has the opportunity to understand what we're doing, what the vision of the business is, and then they're invited to ask any questions to understand what their part of that vision is, and how they can improve themselves and their career. So that's one big change we've made. When I first started, there'd be no town hall where we explain everything in the business like in one big format. That just didn't exist.
And it's actually beautiful, because I'm the same generation as you are, and it's exactly like that. We were always in the unknown, right? Like senior management never shared anything with us. Yeah. One of the reasons why I decided to open my own business is because I wanted to actually know where I was standing, whether it was good or bad. But people were always hiding numbers from me, and I'm like, I don't know if I have 3 months left in this job. Like if they are actually losing massive money, I need to know, right? Like I need to be. I had one source of income when I was an employee. If they will lay me off, that's it. I still have to feed my family, right?
Exactly.
So it's beautiful, because also by doing that, you are holding yourself accountable to them, and they also have to respond to the situation. They know that they need to get their performance up there to reach the goals, right?
Yeah, and it's a team effort, like everything else. I mean, it takes the whole team. Every department has to do their job for us to hit our goal, and they have to do it well for us to achieve what we want and grow as a business.
That is fantastic. Brother, thank you so much for your time. I want to ask you one last question. I'm so conscious of your time, and I thank you, because I know somebody like you, it's hard to make time for contribution, right? If you had access to a billboard in the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
That's a great question. I would probably write, play your own game. Play your own game. I think too many of us try to play somebody else's game. I think at times early on in my career, I would try to play this person's game or this, and my unique abilities are my unique abilities. And once you learn what those are, don't try to do anything else. Play your own games. That's what I would put in there. Don't try to play somebody else's game.
That is fabulous. And I can see that throughout your life path, right? Like you are actually living the advice for sure. Life is too short to pretend to be somebody else, right? And I noticed that I've done that many times in my life, right? Where I'm pretending to be somebody else because I'm too afraid to accept who I am and the abilities that I have, right? It's just insecurity, right?
Yeah, I think it is insecurity, and it's. I think early on, I think when I think you pointed out, I definitely related to that. We're like, hey, I could have done this better at some point in your career. If you think back, to how we used to do things, and it's just like I was trying to, like, this is how I'd seen it done, so I'm going to do it that way. But that's not how I do it. I mean, at this point in my career, and I'm sure in yours too, David, it's just we're pretty direct with people and pretty honest with people because we can't afford not to be. I mean, time is what it is, and better to be honest. There was a quote from one of our colleagues in strategic coach who said, the definition of maturity is learning how to say no in one word. And I thought that was great. I wrote it down because I thought that was great advice. Early on in my career, I think I would try to explain all this. And sometimes it's just no. I'm happy to give you an explanation after the no, but the answer is no, as opposed to giving the explanation first.
Exactly. And you're going around things. And it is the level of maturity, right? Like for me, for example, I'm already in the middle of my life, starting to go to the end of my life. So I don't have any more time to waste. I don't have any more time to to pretend to be somebody else that I am not, right? Yeah. I just want to be free and be me and bless the world with what I got, with my unique abilities, as you said, right?
Yeah. Well, and you have a lot, so that's easy because you have a lot to give, and you're giving it, which I think is phenomenal.
Likewise, brother. Thank you so much. If people want to find you online, where can they access to have to see what you do and follow your company?
Sure, they can go to ReedCorp, which is ReedCorp.com. They can also look up Reed Construction on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But they can anywhere on social media, they should be able to find us at Reed Construction.
Fantastic. Brother, thank you so much for your time. Thanks again for being in this podcast that focusing on getting people to live life in their own terms and live free. Blessings.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.